that also is quite fascinating and honestly relevant for many of us is that there's a significant social component to successful language development. Let me tell you what I mean by that, or at least give you some examples, right? So there's a study from 2003 showing that infants increase the complexity of the vocal output. They babble more. It's more different sounds, different combinations. They increase the complexity of their vocal output when their mother provides immediate social feedback, saying, "Oh, baby, that's so great," or looks at them or gives them any kind of attention. Right? That social cue causes them to increase their language production. Right? And this is a study from 2016, is that it's this feedback loop, right, between caregivers and babies, right, by varying the form and context of their vocalizations, influence maternal behavior, and they create these social interactions that facilitate learning. That is, babies interacting with their moms, with their other caregivers, right? By responding and then getting their caregivers to give them more attention, to be more engaged, that helps learning. And this is a study from 2019. Adults unconsciously modify their speech, actually. This is sort of akin to motherese, right? To include fewer unique words, so a lot more repetition. They use shorter sentences. They use one-word replies targeted to the level of complexity a baby can handle when they're responding to a baby's babbling, but not when they're simply speaking to a baby. So your baby, like my infants, might go, "Ba, ba, ba, ba," and when I respond at that moment, I'm doing this. I'm including fewer unique words. I'm doing shorter sentences and more one-word replies. They're, "Baby, you're good job, sweetheart," right? But when I'm just speaking to them, I might use more complex language, right? So I'm tuning my response because we're having a social interaction. And a little bit older, at 8 months, 8-month-olds will increase their vocalizations when their mother responds to what she thinks they're saying. I do this all the time, right? So my baby Ellen, right, this one right here, she is super vocal right now, and she's just like, "Dad, dad, dad, dad." I'm like, "That's right, honey, dada's right there," right? So I respond to what I imagine she might be saying. And apparently, that encourages her to keep saying more. And babies also learn to direct more of their babblings to their mothers, to begin to have conversation, to exchange information, the foundation of that for conversation. They do that when their mother responds to what she thinks they're saying, right? And they tend to have larger vocabularies later on. So this is something that occurs later that they learn better. Yeah, they do, right? They end up learning more words that way. There's a 2003 study, which is quite interesting, showing that infants learn sounds that are not part of their native language, so foreign sounds. For example, American infants hearing Mandarin phonemes, which is a formal term for sounds that are meaningful in a language, but ones that occur in Mandarin but don't occur in English. Infants can learn them. Yes, they can, but only when the input comes from a live speaker interacting with them and not from a television broadcast of that same speaker. So, for example, if an actual live Mandarin speaker is reading a book to them and pointing at pictures using those Mandarin sounds, they can learn those sounds. They seem to pick up the information. But when it's just a television broadcast and non-interactive, they're just watching this person, but the person's not there, they don't learn the sounds, right? There's something really about that person being there when they're so young that really gets them to say, "Oh, this is something I should be paying attention to," right? And now the interesting thing is there is variation on this ability. So in fact, some autistic children, this is a recent study from 2020, can learn from television. So non-interactive language acquisition, that is learning language, acquiring language by just watching a TV screen, but not interacting, not having a back and forth. So non-interactive language acquisition can occur from television, but only in some autistic children. Typically not when you have typically developing children, right? So, there are these signals, different ways that information is absorbed. And this sort of makes us to a larger question: is how do quote unquote screen time interactions figure into language acquisition, language development? So from a tablet or from a smartphone, where you might video chat with these kids. How does that work? Is that good? Does it help? Does it matter? Right? And there's been some recent work looking at this. So this is from 2016, is that they found that children paid attention and responded to their on-screen partners in a video chat, but only if it was an interactive video chat. So, and they were responding in sync with a partner, such as clapping to imitate after the partner had clapped. So, you're saying, clap your hands, clap, clap, clap. And then the child would then respond, clap, 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 right? And they would pay attention and they would do that. And then on the language side, they would learn new words and patterns this way, but only from video chat when there was a response in real time, right? Again, so not just passively watching a television recording or a recording of anybody, just passive, but someone who would respond to them in real time. So if the kid's like, bah, bah, the person on the screen would respond saying, hi, sweetheart, it's good to hear from you, right? They would respond to them. And it's in this kind of social immediate response kind of situation that the children would learn new words and patterns. Now, starting at about 17 months, a little under a year and a half, children seem to begin to get something out of live video interaction, something really substantial, right, language-wise, from live video interaction with real people. But interestingly, even younger at 9 months, so these are my little triplets who are just now past the 9-month mark. They can actually learn some sound information about language from a screen, but only when they have another 9-month-old present. So if there are like many babies together watching someone on a screen, at 9 months it seems that they can get something from the screen. When if it's just one little 9-month-old on their own, they don't, right? And that's fascinating. Like, why should it matter that you are basically watching with another baby, right? And Patricia Kuhl, who is one of the main authors on the study and real authority on studying language development, in particular sound development in babies, says this. Part of the reason we learn better when we learn collaboratively, in this case, another baby just hanging out with you while you're watching the screen, is that a social partner increases arousal, and arousal in turn increases learning. So even just having someone there, right, that's increasing your arousal socially. And so social partners not only provide information by showing us how to do things, but they provide motivation for learning in the first place, right? So just having someone else around to keep you company in the presence of a passive television screen, that could be helpful, and that starts to be helpful even at 9 months. So just to kind of maybe take away from today some things to keep in mind about language acquisition, about language development, right? So children are building their language knowledge. They're building it much faster than we realize from the input, from those sound waves that they're encountering if they're learning a spoken language, right? And the way that adults talk to them, that motherese, that child-directed speech, that tends to help. And so does learning in a social environment, whether it's having an interactive screen partner, or someone physically present, of course, is probably the best, but having an interactive partner on a screen, on a tablet or a phone, or even just having another baby around to learn with as you're watching maybe a less interactive screen. These social environments really help the development of language. And so even if there's a screen involved, you can still learn something, right? You can still get language development boosts, right, from screen interactions if you have a social environment involved. And so with that, I want to thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.